Because in television you had sort of the soundbite and you had the short story, whereas a newspaper like the Irish Times or the Indo or any of them could go behind the scenes and use sources and all that sort of thing and do more background material. But it also changed the way television fundamentally changed the way politicians had to operate. From then on, right, you could lose your seat by the way you performed on television. Radio was far more anonymous, you wouldn't be seen, whereas on television, your whole personality came into everybody's living room. They developed a view as to whether you were a nice person or you weren't. If you had any very bad mannerisms or whatever, they went against you, how you dressed yourself and all that.
And you were assigned originally as a political reporter
yes.
of the Irish Times.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you met Charlie Haughey?
I do. I met him, I was reporting on the Senate and he was in the Senate.
Right.
And he came up and introduced himself to me.
And how did you find him?
Fine, grand, absolutely grand, yeah.
Some women I've talked to talk about a personal charisma.
Well, he had a charisma, he had a great presence in a room, in a way that, he had a great presence in a room, in a way that his counterpart of that time, Gareth Fitzgerald, hadn't. Gareth would be in a room and would sort of huddle into a corner, into a detailed conversation with somebody. Haughey was all over the room, right? And you sort of felt his presence.
And yet, Gareth was a darling to all of the media.
He was, yeah.
Whereas Charlie was a better knower or a negative character to most of them.
That's right.
Including all the big political correspondents. I mean,
yeah.
you come into 1973, the other, as you said, male political correspondents, they'd all been there around for the arms trial.
They had.
They knew what they saw as Charlie's colour and background and makeup.
Yeah, yeah.
What was your take on it?
What was interesting about the arms trial was that all of the political correspondents, and there were far fewer then than there are now because there were far fewer media outlets and not 24-hour news, but all of the well-known political correspondents of the day, Michael Mills in the press, Dick Walsh, Chris Glennon, Arthur Noonan in RTE, Donald Kelly in RTE after him, all of them were totally against Haughey because of his actions in the arms crisis. The only one that was open was Liam O'Neill of the Examiner.
And were you shaped by their view?
No, I was very interested in their view though, as to how they could come at that view, because I wasn't involved enough in journalism at that time. So what I did then myself, nearer to the time when Haughey became leader of Fianna Fáil in 1980, I took out all the files out of the Irish Times library and read all the reports about it to sort of formulate my own view.
And it was, at that stage?
My own view at that stage was that it was no great surprise, given that Fianna Fáil was the Republican Party, that at some stage or other they would have to come to terms with their rhetoric about the Fort Greene field, and it didn't surprise me at all that there would be different views as to what should be done in 1969 and 70.
Apart from those who didn't like Charlie, like
yeah.
Gareth, those who didn't like Charlie, like Fianna Fáil, loved Jack. What was your take on Jack? Jack Lynch?
I met him a few times. He was a gentleman, nice.
You met him only a few times?
Yeah, I met him a good few times on my own. He invited me out to his house at one stage to tell me about the arms trial. Now, he didn't tell me anything new, do you understand? But he wanted to make sure...
That was later?
He wanted to make sure that a sort of a younger person, I think, coming up, would know what his perspective was. Do you understand what I mean?
Trying to control a reading of the text of history.
Yeah. But he was a gentleman, a very nice man, very popular. But cute, very cute.
In what way?
He wouldn't be as forthcoming now as Haughey would be, or any of his successors, or Garrett would be. Do you know what I mean?
He was standoffish in the media.
He was, yeah.
That's what I meant by you only met him a couple of times, because he wasn't hanging around with the media.
No, he wasn't, no.
You were a political reporter at the Irish Times, and then the Sunday Tribune was set up in the original first form by James Mulcahy, who also owned Hibernian magazine.
Yeah.
And you'd done a bit of writing for Hibernian magazine. What kind of writing had you done for them?
I had done...
It's a political affairs magazine, before Miguel
I had done, when I was in the Examiner in Cork, I had done a bit of freelance work for them. Yeah.
About what type of
Well, there was one story I did in Cork. It was rewriting stories that I had done in the Examiner and broadening them in different perspectives. There was one story I had done about an unmarried mother's home in Cork and all that, and them being given this child who had a twisted leg or something like that, and how the child was then 2 and they couldn't, nobody would adopt it, right? And I remember doing a news story in the Examiner, and it sort of took off, you know, there was a lot. And Hibernia asked me, would I go to the home and see who else goes there, what and what. So it was sort of offshoots of stuff.
This was early 70s?
Yeah, offshoots of stuff that I did for the Examiner, really. Cork material, really.
So the approach to go to this new newspaper,
Yeah.
the Tribune, and the first newspaper I think is set up in decades,
Yes.
to become its political correspondent.
Yes.
How did that come about?
John Mulcahy invited me. John Mulcahy invited me himself. I didn't know him at the time. He invited me. At that stage, I was a Dáil reporter, but not on the formal political correspondence team. And it was sort of a challenge, and I wanted to get on it, but I could foresee that there were people ahead of me, right, and that I may not get a job, right? I may not get a promotion. So I said to myself, sure, this is a great challenge. This will prove to yourself now whether you can do it or not.
But even though, as you said earlier, the Irish Times, as you saw,
Yeah.
was the newspaper.
Yeah.
You now up and cut and left it and went across to take a chance on this new newspaper.
Well, I took a chance on myself, really.
Right.
Do you understand?
No,
I thought if I were able to do the political correspondence job well, that I'd be easily able to go back to the Irish Times.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'd be employable.
You were arrogant enough to believe if you failed in the Sun Tribune, you could go back to work with the Irish Times.
No, it wasn't that. No, it wasn't about that at all. It was about that if I were able to be a good political correspondent, I'd be a good political correspondent and I'd be employable no matter what happened to the Tribune. But I wasn't thinking the Tribune would fail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But it was the Tribune was a big gamble, and it did fail.
It did.
It ultimately did.
Yeah.
Incarnation and in the second incarnation.
Yes.
So it did fail.
It did. Yeah.
And when it failed, you didn't go back to the Irish Times.
No, I didn't. When it failed, the Sunday Press approached me, and they didn't have a political correspondent. They'd never had one, and they said they would create the position for me to go there. Now I had discussions with them at that stage.